Welcome back to Code Hive, the place where we make it work, make it right, and make it fast. So in today's video, we're going to continue from where we left off, right? So in the previous video, we looked at how to create a API view, and we created a get method to retrieve all the books or a specific book from our book table. Okay, so if you still haven't watched that video, then please do that, because we are continuing from where we left off. So right now, the next thing that I want us to look at is creating the post method, right? So let us quickly add that comment. So I'm just going to say post. So as we look at the video, as we looked at the examples in the previous video, the post is to send data to the table. Okay, so same way as we did the get, we're just going to do the same for the post. We're going to pass in self as well as request. So basically, like I said to you guys, the self as well as the request will always be in your parameter. Okay, so the reason why we have the self and the request is what the client sends out, or well, what the client is sending to the method from the front end. Okay, so that's why we use the request. So the request parameter, it contains all the data that is being sent by the client. Okay, so now after we have that, we're just going to say, I'm trying to, okay, there we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call it serializer, and we're going to say book serializer. Like I said in the previous video, I'm only going to be working with the book serializer as well as the book model. Okay, so now we're going to say data is equals to request dot data. So basically what we are doing, remember in the previous section when we did the get method, we said serializer.data. So in this case, we are saying data is equals to request.data. So it's equals to what the user is sending to us. So the request.data, which is the data that is being sent to the method. Okay, so if the user sends through the book name, the title, and everything, we're going to say request.data, and we're going to assign it to data. Okay, so basically that is what is going on in that line. So the book serializer is used to convert the request.data, which is the data sent in the request, and it's converting it into a Python object, right, and validate it against the book model. So what do we do after that? So now after we do that, we are going to say if serializer.is underscore valid. Okay, so what we are saying is we're saying that if the serializer is valid, then do the following. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be doing serializer.save. Okay, so let me quickly explain that part. So we're saying that if the serializer is valid, so serializer being line 22 over here, if the data that is being assigned to serializer is valid, then you save. So for example, if the user maybe passes through two items, right, in the request from the front end, then in our serializer we specified that all the fields should be there, then it's not going to return a is valid, because it's not going to be valid. Okay, so what happens if it's not valid? So we're going to say else, we're going to first return something if the serializer is valid. So we're going to return a response. Okay, and we're going to say serializer.data like we did in the previous example, and then we're going to say status is equals to http underscore 201. Status is equals to, I missed something over here, is equals to status dot, because I can see now it's not even, okay, created. Let me delete that. Okay, cool. So what we are doing, if the serializer is valid, we're going to save the serializer, and then we're going to return a response, which will be the serializer.data, and we're just going to return a status saying that it has been created. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, if the serializer is not valid, what are we going to do? Right, so we're just going to return an error. Just going to say return response, and then we're going to say serializer.errors. Okay, and then we're just going to say status is equals to status dot bad request. So let's look for the bad request, http:/400, which is the bad request. Okay, so you could do it like this, or you could just remove this else and then you just do it like that. Okay, so this is it for the post method. We're creating a post method, we're passing in self as well as request, and then we're saying serializer is equals to book serializer, and we're saying where data, we're assigning data to request.data that is being passed by the user in the front end, and then we're saying that if this is valid, save the serializer and then return a response to say that it's been created, else return an error of bad request. Okay, so basically that is for the post method. Okay, so now that we have created the post as well as the get, the next one that I want us to look at is the update. Okay, well, it's updating, but I mean, it's the put request. Okay, so now again, we're going to do the same thing, zip, and then we're going to say put, and then we're going to pass in self as well as request. And then now the other thing that we need to pass in is the primary key. Okay, so why do we need a primary key? The reason why we need a primary key is we need to specify which row of data we are updating. So not like the get method where the primary key is optional. In this case, it's not optional, because if you don't specify the ID in which you want to update the data for, then what are we updating? Okay, so hence why the difference between the get and the put in terms of the primary key is that one we said none, because it can be there or you can exclude it, right? But in this case, when updating as well as deleting, you need to specify primary key. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a variable. So we're going to say book is equals to, so I'm going to say get object or return a 404 error, and then we're going to say book. So we're going to say our model, and then we're going to say where the primary key is equals to the primary key. So where the primary key and the database, which is the ID, is equals to the primary key that we're passing in our parameter. Okay, and then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to say serializer. So we're going to create a variable serializer, and we're going to say is equals to book serializer, and we're going to pass in the variable. Okay, so the variable book, and then now we're going to say data is equals to request dot data. Okay, so again, the difference between this part where we're passing in book serializer and we just say book is because over here we are taking in what the user is passing in, right? So the data that is being sent through the method, right? So request.data, and we're assigning it to the data variable. Okay, so basically that's the difference between the two. Then after that, what we need to do is, again, if the serializer is valid, then we save it. If not, then we do something. So if serializer.is_valid, right? If it's valid, then we're going to go ahead and say serializer.save, and we're going to return a status. So return a response, right? So we're going to return a response of serializer.data. data. Okay, so this case you could just add status of this, but we're not going to add the status because the difference is with this one is created, right? In this case, we're not creating, we're updating. So we're just passing in the data, and that's just good enough. Okay, and then if not, then we're just going to return a response of error. Okay, so a response of serializer dot errors. Okay, and then we're going to say status is equals to status dot http 400 bad request. Okay, so let's recap. So we're creating a put method. We're passing in self request as well as a primary key. Why are we passing in a primary key? Because we need a primary key to know which row of data we are updating. Then we're going to create a variable called book, and then we're going to say get object 0404. So we're going to get the data where the primary key is equals to the primary key that the user is passing in. So if we have ID1 in the table and the user is passing in ID1 in the front end, then it will return data for that specific ID. Then we're creating a variable serializer, and we're saying is equals to the book serializer. We're passing in book, so object that is being returned, and we're getting the request or data from the user, and we're assigning it to data. So the user wants to update the name, the bio, the whatnot, we're assigning it to data. Then if it's valid, if the serializer is valid, then we save and we return a response, and then we just pass in the serializer.data. Else we just return serializer.errors and we return a status of bad request. So basically that is the put method. So the reason why I'm doing all these methods with you guys now before looking at the front end side is so that it's easier that way, right? It's easier to always start with your back end and then you go back to your front end and you do your front end. That way you know that your back end is done and you just call those methods. Okay, so basically that's the put. Okay, so the last one that we are going to look at is the delete. Okay, so this one should go, pretty fast. So we pass in self, request, and like I said, when using put as well as delete, you always pass a primary key. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to create a variable, and then we're just going to say is equal to get object 0404, right? And we're just going to say book, and we're going to say pk is equals to pk. So again, it's the same as line 30, which is the one for the put, right? We get the object where the primary key is equals to the primary key from the specific table. Okay, and then we're just going to say book.delete basically, and then we just return a response. Okay, and then we return response, and then we just say it has been deleted. Okay, so we're just going to say status is equals to status.http, and then we're going to say 204, so no content. So it has been deleted, there's nothing there. So that's basically the delete. So again, we're passing in self, request, primary key. We're getting the object where the primary key is equal to the primary key in our book model. Then we're just going to say delete, and the response is there's no content. So I will make a video where I explain to you guys the different status codes that we have, because right now we've used created, we've used request, bad request, and we've used no content. So I will make a video of the HTTP status that we can return. So basically that is it. That is all the methods. That is the delete, the put, the post, as well as the get. Okay, so yeah, so basically we've looked at the different methods. We've looked at how to use serialize, because in the other video we looked at creating serializers, but how to actually use the serializer in terms of creating an API. So we can see that everything, all these methods, they fall under this book API view. So you can create one class, and inside that class you can have all the methods that you want to make use of, instead of having to create a specific class and then create your get, and then create a specific class and then create your post. So you can do all of the request, the get, and everything inside one class. So basically that's it for this video. In the next video, I don't know what's going to be next, but we are going to be continuing with this. We are going to be creating a front end side where the user will be able to insert data, and we're going to call these methods. We're going to, create a way where the user can delete, update, all that stuff. We will be doing that. So basically that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys learned something. Please leave a comment in the comment section if you have any questions for me. Yeah, so basically, if you like this video, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and thank you guys so much for watching.